Okay, now we're good. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Would the secretary take the roll?
We have Connie Snuckert,
Present?
Kathy Cavalier, Tiffany DeMayo, Chris Wilson,
Present.
Rosario Scalia,
Yes, he's not coming. He's out of town.
correct. Kenneth Lane
We'll be late.
and Frank Falco.
I think Frank's
Disney
out of town
World.
as well, isn't he?
He's in Disney World.
Okay. We can stand for a moment of silence and the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to consider, the next item is, consider approving the agenda. Would someone like to, make a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
The motion stands approved. We now have public comment for agenda items only. We actually do have a public here. Do you have any comment?
Well,
Okay, will someone make a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting.
Thank you, Chris. Will someone second?
I'll second.
Okay, they are approved. So we'll move on to new business. The first item is discussion and possible action on additional amendments to the ordinance. Kathy, this was something you wanted put on the agenda, so I'll turn this over to you.
Well, I wanted actually to, going forward, put a focus on discussing and examining our ordinance as it is, to see where the maybe changes can be made in it to make it more, I'll call it user-friendly. So it would entail, which I will get copies of ordinances from several other townships that adopted it with all the inventory in place. And what their process for going forward. And I know we just approved the process for going forward, and they actually voted on that last night, and we just voted on that 2 weeks ago, so they got that pretty quick.
Mhm.
And they voted to approve that process. So I think it was more a matter of some of the focus might change in just understanding our ordinance, looking at how it's worded, seeing where there might be problems, because I feel like that could be a problem in why this has become such busy work in turning in these applications, and then they really aren't going anywhere, or they're not getting acted on very quickly. But that being said, if that's the process, maybe we look at it from the other point of view, which is the ordinance itself, and wording in the ordinance, and maybe look at some other townships and what they've done to kind of make it easier within that zoning issue. So I have Haverford Township, Upper Darby's in the process of getting one passed. And I have a copy of what their draft is, and they are about to get it passed. So I was gonna look at the wording and how they class them, where they got their inventory, did they adopt the inventory? So I was looking at Delaware County mostly, but there are several from Chester County too that I have East Pikeland. Now, I did this in conjunction with Kate Clifford at the county. And she referred me to a couple people that could kind of get more of an outline of how we go about it. So that is what the discussion is. It's not a specific, but is it something that you would be interested in, something we could do? And it can go on to different meetings. We can
Could be a
take
different
pieces of,
section of the ordinance.
sure,
every-
because ours isn't very long and it's not, there's, and comparing it, I could get copies. So I'd have a copy for everybody of the others and you could just compare. But to familiarize yourself, I mean, you really to understand it and to understand the issues that are coming up, I think we really have to study it more carefully. And I can say that from the people, now I do talk with some of the people, with some of the historic homes. And a problem that comes up is the letter that comes from the township. And I don't mean that they have a thing about that, but when a letter comes out from the township, it's treated more fearfully than when I would put a letter from the Historic Society. So in essence,
Like it's, oh my God, it's the township.
yes, I put letters out to all the same homeowners that we are now putting letters out again to originally when I was helped to draft the ordinance. And at that point, I got all positive. And nobody came forward even with a negative about the ordinance. It was negative about sewers or fearful things that, oh, can I change this? But it was nothing major and no one objected. So at that point, you would make the assumption then going forward, when you drafted the ordinance, had all the inventory been put into it, they expected that they were already in it. So when they get a letter from the township saying that now we are putting you into the ordinance there, red flag goes up. Uh-oh, what is that? Is that different? Is that something? And I have been told this by several people. And then I thought about it and it kind of makes sense in a way because they don't understand it. So I had meetings where I would sit with people, talk about the ordinance, tell them, allay any fears. And that's why, as I said, and during the planning process of this, I explained that nobody came forward with an objection at that point. Now, some maybe toward the very end, developers, maybe BPG or other people had concerns, and they probably showed up at the end, but no homeowners came forward that I couldn't.
There's something to
handle.
be said for simply reviewing the ordinance in order for commission members to become more familiar with its contents. It's a pretty dense document and I've been through it pretty carefully a couple of times. And there are places where I find it to be either redundant or contradictory. And some places where there are, well, I guess you could call them typographical errors. There's one point where a major section starts and there's no subheading 1. The first subheading you come to is subheading 2. Where is subheading 1? I don't know. So at the very least, this kind of thing might be a useful review. I don't know, Chris, what do you think?
Well, I mean, we need to do something. We've been here close to a year and I don't think we've put one property on. So, whether that's the ordinance or whether that's how we work, I don't know.
Tiffany, what are your thoughts?
I agree that it is worthwhile to spend more time as a commission discussing the ordinance, identifying any questions, or as Kathy put it, opportunities to make the wording more accessible.
I mean,
It doesn't,
if there's a way to make the ordinance work more for us, yes, that's great. But if we're just toiling around the edges, I mean, that's fine, but is it really going to change the fact that we're not really moving forward as a group?
well, I think part of the issue is that once we hold a public hearing and make a recommendation, from that point forward, it's essentially out of our hands.
Mhm.
And we don't control the speed with which things happen.
Which is why the general consensus is it would have been much easier on everyone had they dragged the entire catalog in with the ordinance rather than trying to do it after the fact. But
Yeah,
we're not there anymore. We're here. So unless we can change that, anything we can do to make this process easier, then we're handing it off and out of our hands. But if we can at least continue to work towards putting it into other people's hands, all we can do.
yeah. Well, I think I'm hearing a consensus that taking a look at it would be a good idea. Am I right in thinking I'm hearing that?
Mhm.
I'm fine with looking at it.
Okay. And there are two ways of looking at it. One is just studying the ordinance itself to become familiar with it and evaluate it. And the other is comparing ordinances from other communities to see if that can help us clarify it in any way, understand it any better, improve it.
If we're gonna do that, we should probably take a look at what other communities are set up functionally like us. Because Haverford may not be it.
Hmm.
They may be they may be incorporated completely differently than we are.
Well, probably we need to maybe restrict ourselves to class 2 townships that have the same kind of governance structure that we do. Do you think?
If we, I mean, we're not lawyers. If we understand what the differences are in our structures and how it may or may not affect our ordinance, that would be a good thing to know.
Mhm. Well, that's probably something to bear in mind
I'll
as we
into
look
the
at,
class.
as we look at ordinances from other. I think Chris has a good point. There's no point in looking at ordinances that are totally unrelated to how we operate.
Correct.
I agree. And I do wonder how much of that time will be spent quote unquote howling at the moon, trying to make suggested ordinance changes that have to then go to the solicitor that then no changes happen for a very long time, or they just get overruled altogether because it was deemed not.
But if we don't do it, we're simultaneously going to continue putting in applications.
Right. But it just, but the
Because
time
we've
that we.
approved the whole book. or the whole inventory.
No, absolutely. I think understanding the ordinance is pertinent to us as a commission to understand so that we can put more emphasis or at least more information to the public, because like you said, everybody you talked to so far thought that they were already included.
And that's the biggest obstacle and the biggest,
Right.
pitfall of our ordinance is that we did not include
Right.
the inventory.
But what,
Even Marple Township included.
but will our time be better spent banging on the ordinance, trying to get that changed, or time spent in community outreach and getting it out to the homeowners and to the township at large, where we are and what the situation is and what we need from them to push this forward? Or to
In a
get-
perfect world where everybody was going to go out and do that, I'd say, yeah, that would be great. I don't see the resource to do that. We can't,
Mhm.
it's, as it is, I put in almost every application.
I'm not saying you.
No, but I'm saying
like,
outreach.
Right, there are other
very
ways to
difficult.
outreach besides knocking on every door, phone calling every person, or,
Sure.
you know, but that's what I mean, like time spent looking into, you know, as discussing as a commission, what can we do? What are the options? What information needs to be provided? I'm just saying, like, we have one meeting a month. And during that time, we want to get as much done as we can. So I think looking at the ordinance is great. I just don't want to put all our eggs in one basket and hope that that gets it done while neglecting things that we can do proactively in the
But
meantime.
I think you can do both.
Yeah.
So I'm
One-
saying, I'm
one
not
thing-
saying you can't do that. And when you're looking at the ordinance, mind you, I'm not just saying examine it, come up with amendments. So because that was the intent when I was drafting this. Pass this ordinance and we can amend it and we can make it work better. So I would like to call that and say, yes, okay, we've seen it for a year. We're reading it. We understand it. Let's see what amendments we can do. Maybe they can turn them down, but they have to have a reason. You know,
Well,
is there a
thing I think-
reason why you would not want these on there?
One thing I think we should be careful about is not to beat a dead horse.
Mhm.
Because that becomes self-defeating. If we try to do that, then changes that we can make and that we should make may get, the baby may get thrown out with the bathwater, as it were. And one of the things that it strikes me we need to be careful about is requesting that the ordinance be changed to include all the properties that have been approved, that are on the approved inventory, because the township has already made it very clear that that's not going to happen because of its relationship to zoning issues. So I'm not saying we shouldn't try again, but I think that we need to be careful about addressing that topic, because if we push that too hard, any other changes that we want may go down the tubes along with it. But it's just, I'm just raising a cautionary note.
Yeah, so if I can, I would give you a couple suggestions just as a thought. One is obviously we did get the procedure lined out with the board last night, that was approved. So I think we're prepared to start presenting case or pieces to them so that everybody understands the process. One of the things that the procedure says is that there's a report that goes with each one. So we have to make sure we have all the reports in that we want for each property that's already been submitted so that it can go to the board so they can review it, so that they can take the first action.
Well, we haven't held public hearings on those properties yet.
You have held public hearings
Well,
before,
the four, yes.
but I don't know that I have a final report from you
That's what I was wondering.
for any of those that you've done. I have what was presented at the meeting from your perspective, but I don't have what you took into account of the comment of the
I
property
was
owners.
never asked to submit anything.
But I'm just saying that needs to be
I agree,
done.
we have to do that.
And so as we get those, I'll start presenting those through the boards as they come in. And we'll see how the board, I know the board doesn't want to do multiple ones a night. Maybe they might do two. Maybe they might do two, but I don't know that they'll do more than two in an evening just because of the time it takes to go through a true hearing. That being said, I think there were 3 that were turned in last
4.
week. Was it 4?
Oh, no, 4. Kathy turned in 4.
Okay,
What turned in last week?
yes,
Yes, 4.
okay. We've started the process on those, making sure we've actually come up with a standard letter and those kind of things to make sure everything's set, and we've got that. And that's going out so that they will be on your next agenda coming up. I think it's the 28th of November,
Right.
if I'm right. So the other that I would say to you is I would consider if you are serious about trying to make some changes, what I know from past experience working with other commissions, boards, and committees from the township is it might be beneficial for you to have a subgroup who puts together an initial thought that is brought back to the whole group, and you discuss an issue versus trying to take the whole and look at it. It tends to get a little unwieldy.
I think we were thinking more in terms of breaking it out into different sections and looking at different sections at each meeting over a course of several meetings.
And that's fine. I'm just saying you may have a benefit of if there's a committee that works on it, a subcommittee that works on it ahead of time, who says, here's what these other three, like you do a comparison of maybe what three other communities are doing, plus, you know, of what you look at our ordinance and say, what might be a suggestion that you bring back for specific items to discuss versus trying to figure out what you'll discuss in the meeting, if that makes sense. I just know in a couple of the other committees, we had to go to that kind of an approach in order to move forward on what they wanted to do, because there was so much back and forth about, well, it could be this,
Yes.
it could be that, it could, you know, it was hard to make a decision because there were so many different moving parts with 7 different people having a view on what it could be. You know, it might be easier to, you know, have a group that comes back and says, here are the things that we saw. And here's what we would recommend. And not that it precludes somebody else from coming up with something, but it helps to kind of set the direction for you. That's just, that's a thought. I realize it means that somebody else has to do some work outside of a meeting that's here. I just know that I had a committee working on another committee working on a change to the ordinance. And if they did it as a whole, it took them 2 and 3 times as long as it would do it the other way. So that's just a recommendation. You don't have to do what I'm saying. It's just a thought.
What do you guys feel about that?
I would be fine with that.
Do we want to have everybody mark up a copy, turn it in, and then have a small group look at them and see what's consistent, see what everybody's then?
That's a possibility. What do you two think?
Otherwise having a committee do it does make a lot of sense. Or doing it, having everybody look at it and then have a committee do it. Rather than
yeah.
trying to do it free for all during open meeting.
Well, and yes, because we could identify what the problems first without even looking at it. What are the problems that we're having? And then go through the ordinance and see where perhaps it's being caused by that, or what could be changed to alleviate the difficulties that we're having, or the wording, or I think that that's probably part of it. Now, if the process is going to go faster now, we'll see, you know, now that they've adopted the process that we,
Right.
If things move a little bit.
yeah. And in the meantime, we still hand in the applications.
Yeah, so
So you do
Chris,
all the
what you're suggesting is that each commission member mark up a copy
Have everybody read through it and say, what questions do you have?
and then turn that information over to a subcommittee that then will digest it and,
That way, when we actually do get around to discussing it in open meeting, we know everybody will have read it.
right.
Right.
Right. So
And-
what kind of a time frame should we put on this?
I mean,
By next,
I read it. I don't know how long it takes for everybody to do
Well,
it. So
who-
you guys can.
well, first we have to figure out who the subcommittee is. So who gets the questions?
Right,
You should be on.
who should be on it? And unfortunately, we have 3 members who aren't.
Oh, yes. No, you're not pointing at me, right?
Putting it Connie
What are you looking at me for?
to be on the subcommittee.
Well, yeah, I can do that.
And
At least for the next couple of months, I go off the board at the end of December. So if this is going to carry over into the new year, that's something to think about. But between now and then, yes.
mhm.
We should have a third person.
Well, you know, they're not here to ask.
We could nominate
I want
somebody
to
who's
keep
not here.
making the same people who are here do it.
What?
Because there's only 4. Yeah, with the people who aren't here, we should be
Do we
asking them.
voluntold-
We could start with
volunteer
just
people
you and
that
I,
they
and
have
then
to
we can ask if Rosario wants to, or,
Okay,
um,
all right, so we'll start with.
he's
the
pretty
sub-
familiar. I know he knows Lower Merions inside and out, so I'm sure he would be
but
interested.
Rosario, you mean?
Yes,
Yeah, I mean, that's who I was thinking, because it seems to.
That's how I was
fit
thinking of
with how he
everything.
thinks.
Yeah.
So I'd certainly
He
ask
seems
him.
to be very vocal about his thoughts on the ordinance.
Well, and I suspect he'll go through it, and furthermore, he'll go through it quickly.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay, so you and me and Rosario.
He's not here. he
We'll
gets
just
to-
tell him that's what he gets for not being
Yes.
here.
Where's your trip? You've been nominated.
Okay, Chris, we need a formal motion.
I would like to make a motion that we put together a committee to review the rules. And that we all submit a copy of a marked up
Copy
Yep.
to that committee. By when?
I think we should be able to do that this month. At least get the marked up copies through.
Marked up
And then,
copies before the next meeting.
yeah, and then the committee
Well,
may or may not have a chance to.
we need
look
to
at
have
it
a
with it.
date, I mean, an actual date.
Well,
because
that
just
would be
before-
November 28th. It's the next meeting.
Right, but the next meeting is the 20th, the minutes and agenda items are due. So I think like at
A
least,
week earlier.
I think at least by then.
Yeah, okay, so a week earlier than the 28th, which would be anybody have their calendar handy?
I do. Why don't we go with the week before is the 21st, but why don't we go with the Friday before that, the 17th?
In the 17th.
Because we're gonna lose the tail end of the following week to Thanksgiving, so.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be out of town for almost a week over the Thanksgiving holiday. I'm going to Michigan.
So let's,
um,
let's try to have marked up copies to Connie in 2 weeks.
So
Okay,
that's did we say the?
So we'll say the
14th?
17th. 2.5 weeks.
and people can send them to me either electronically or on paper.
All right, has anything changed to the ordinance since we first?
No, we still have two amendments.
All right,
in
so
holding.
we should all have electronic access to it from when we started.
Right,
Got it.
okay, do you have the motion written down sufficiently clearly so we can act on it?
The motion is to create subcommittee and each member review and submit questions to said subcommittee by November 17th.
Okay. That's the motion. Someone want to second it?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving right along. This next is discussion and possible action on historical resource application. That should be applications. And there really is nothing we need to do on this, but Kathy did submit 4 applications.
And
This-
I'm actually holding them here. I only have 3. So what was the,
Well, you probably didn't get it in time. So that was, I turned one in yesterday.
oh, okay.
So that wouldn't
So
go,
I just wanted Kathy to.
I
tell
That's
think-
fine. I just wanted to make sure that
You had everything.
I'm not missing something that we
Right.
thought we had. Okay.
Now, I just wanted Kathy to tell the committee, the commission about the properties that we've started the nominations on, so that everybody's on the same page. But we don't have to take any action on this because the clock has already started. So Kathy, speak to us about these 4 properties.
speak to
Just
you
tell us which.
We get them.
where they are, because you
we
know
get
where
those
they were,
forwarded
because
to
I
you?
gave them to
So
you.
we could see what's coming.
What?
Could we get the basic info on those just forwarded to the group so we can see what's coming? Not like right now, but
No, after this meeting, because they were submitted.
yes.
So you would, I guess, when you know whether you've sent out the letters. Generally, then you would know if anybody was coming. You mean if
No, he wants to see the stuff that you have, so that the committee is informed.
I'm assuming what you're wanting is copy of the application.
Yes,
Okay.
it's nice to be
I
able,
can do
it's
that.
nice to be able to review them before we get here.
Yeah.
And it's extra nice to be able to do it like a week in advance.
Like
And you mean
before,
for the public hearing.
Yes,
So if the people are,
Yeah.
that's what you're saying beforehand,
Yeah.
not for today's meeting, but before. the
Yes.
Okay,
Sometime in advance to be able to like read through.
Right.
What properties we're
you
looking
have
at.
to, yeah. And
Uh,
usually if they're going to come, that would be on it's kind of late
Yeah,
on
the
the
last-
agenda. Can we be notified? I guess they don't mention if they're, when you're doing the agenda, how do you know which property owners are going to come to the meeting? You don't, do you? Sometimes, I know you did for the past a couple of.
Yeah, we've known, sometimes we know, sometimes we don't.
Okay.
So what we do,
I'm not actually concerned with whether somebody's gonna show up or not, just to be able to review the material in advance. Which, sometimes we get the notifications 2 days before and it's just not enough time.
Okay. But you do know that we approved all these, so they're already
Yeah,
approved, that
because-
we all, said they
No,
were
I get
valid
that.
for historic. We've,
It's just easier to actually have something physically.
Right.
or on
so the
computer.
application copy would probably be good. There are the 405 College Avenue, which is known as the John Hunter House, built in 1722, obviously historic.
I know that one.
Yes, you do.
Is that near you on College Avenue?
No, it's not there.
Oh,
The Heights, it's
Um,
behind here.
yeah.
Yeah, it's,
And it has a lot of the original flooring, fireplaces, a lot of it's still intact and it was listed in the inventory, obviously. It has a plaque outside. It's known as this historic property. The other 661 Valerie Drive, built in 1828, known as the Hibbard McNeil House. It's listed again in the Newtown, Delaware County Historic Resource Inventory and Commission. I do not have the specifics of the inside of that.
We don't.
But it is on our inventory, so, yes, it's not an easy one to get access to. But it's on 4 acres and, could be at risk. And neighbors have voiced concerns about it being preserved. So I jumped ahead to do that one because I met some neighbors who were concerned about it. 103 Tanglewood Lane, 1760s. Fieldstone was stuck over. Was known as the Nathaniel Newland residence, Quaker farmhouse. Might be familiar with the Newland, Grist Mill, Newlands.
Former client of mine.
Yes, the Newlands were pretty well known. Had pretty much everything still intact, original random with flooring, paneling, large cooking fireplaces, open beam ceilings. As far as we can say that it's still intact, I don't know if anyone's had access. Again, that's a difficult one to get access to. It was also later owned in the 80s by a prominent artist and his wife, Carl Lindborg and Alice Lindborg, whose artwork graces the hallways up to the administration here. And he was instrumental. He wrote the History of Newtown Township book as well. And his son gave me a lot of information about the house. His son lives in Chester County and is very interested in preserving that as well. And then this last one was the one we had talked about, 3201 Westchester Pike, built in 1813. It's listed in the inventory. It is, if you're familiar with it, it's right up on Westchester Pike, white, tall federal building, 2-story. I think it has 2 doors, maybe 2 front doors,
Shrubbery.
Yeah.
right by the little sugary.
Right on Barron
The
and.
one that's
Yes,
buried in
on-
shrubbery.
Like,
It's the
Mhm.
one that's buried in the shrubbery.
Well, you see the front of it. The
It's on the
front's right on
corner of-
this, on the sidewalk.
like Charlotte, there's like a little garage and then it's right there in the corner of Barron and Westchester Pike.
As I said, built in 1813, possibly late
Blueberry.
1700s. Had all the original random with flooring, woodwork, peg beams, basement had log beams, large metal hooks where they dried meat. It has an extensive history and that's why it was included in the inventory as well. And because of its location, being right up on the pike, it could be at risk, so.
Yeah,
It could look
especially in
like
that area,
Charlotte's,
which is very,
could be buried like Charlotte's did.
It's the one that's buried in the shrubberies.
yeah.
Yeah.
Fully buried. I think
Sort
they've
of.
cut them down since.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's a
think
little bit more visible now.
I think there's a place on that house you can look up through the side of it, right through the roof.
Really?
Really?
Unless
Same
it's-
owner since
I didn't
I
realize
was,
that.
I would say since the 1960s. Same family, teacher in Alice Grimm was one of
It's a neat
them,
house.
was contestable rather.
Hmm.
But yeah, so it's the same family as it when I looked it up, so. Yeah, apparently it is, and the property was very interesting as well. So they were the 4, and if you go on, I know our inventory doesn't tell as much as I get sometimes out of the book.
Yeah.
But all of these are not in the one that's online, that's much more extensive.
Yeah, I think one thing we need to be a little bit careful about when we put in these applications is that we are only concerned with the exterior of the building. And it's nice to have information about the interior, but I don't think we should include that as part of our reasons for nominating things, because the ordinance restricts us to the exterior of buildings.
No, that's included in the descriptions of why it was originally
is.
put in the
Yes, it is.
inventory, yes.
I just wouldn't want to confuse the uninformed by giving them a lot of interior information they don't
Oh, I'm only giving it to you,
need. Only to me, yeah, that works.
only to us.
Only to us, that
Yeah.
works. Okay, let's move on to the next item. Discuss a plan on how to communicate to homeowners about the need to apply for Class 2 designation. I'm open for comment.
Do we have a Facebook page?
If people hate getting letters from the township, are we able to, or is there any benefit in kind of holding hands with a non-governmental group, such as the Historical Society, to kind of backdoor
I mean, what we originally did,
that?
which we
What
did
you-
reach
what you
out to all
originally
these
did.
people.
Well, there's also the township newsletter, which I wrote an article for in last summer, but I've never seen it. So maybe, maybe an article.
Yeah, we get that township one quarterly, right? I believe it is.
Well, living at
Quarterly
Dunwoody, I don't get it.
but they also have the Newtown Square magazine, like the Neighbors
Right,
magazine. My husband
Yeah.
actually knows the person who
Right. I
runs it,
know him
or
too.
who's the editor, you know him too?
Bill Glasse.
Yes.
Yes.
That might be someplace to put an article as well.
I
That
could
might
start with having our historian Doug Humes write an article for that. He writes those history articles in that.
Mhm.
And he
I
could
think there's-
probably do
I
that
think there's a wider
in the Newtown Square.
audience for that one.
Let me ask him, because we just did the cover for that.
does the Historical Society have some sort of a periodic newsletter that goes to members?
Mhm.
Well, maybe if we put it in the Historical Society newsletter, in another edition of the Township newsletter, and the Newtown Square magazine, between those three things, we ought to hit practically everybody in the township, I would think. Certainly a significant number.
I would make note that the township is going to an electronic newsletter.
I'm sorry, what?
The township is going to an electronic newsletter. At
Mhm.
least I think that's the direction we're headed. We're doing a test over November and December. So it would be an opportunity, if you wanted to do something for either one of those two, just to see how it goes. And they're working right now on getting the email list together, encouraging people to turn their emails in.
Okay.
Well, I think one thing we should find out is what the submission deadlines are for these various publications, like,
Yeah.
because it would be nice if we could hit more or less at the same time. Within, how much lead time is needed on the township email thingy?
That's,
There'll be something going out this week or early next week. I think it's a 2-week lead time, 2.5 week lead time, much closer.
We might want to aim for December then, depending on what the Newtown,
The Neighbors magazine is monthly.
that's monthly, and I don't know what kind of lead time they have. Or even if they would accept it, how do we find out?
Well, I'm sure.
I'm gonna write Doug and
Yeah.
ask him. if he
Because
could
it's
Put
monthly.
that as his history article. He has a running every month history article that he
Mm.
gets for free, so many words.
Cool.
So all we need to know is what the deadline is.
And he probably knows that too.
And how about the Historical Society? What's the lead time there?
Oh, we can do that anytime.
Oh, I see.
Just put it together and just mail it out. So, because we send
Yeah,
out
that's the
updates
easy
all the
one.
time. Yes,
Yeah.
we're the easy one, yes.
But what are thoughts on social media? Because that is something that can be updated anytime.
Well, Does the township have a Facebook website?
We do have a Facebook page, yes.
Or maybe we could put it on the township Facebook page.
Something.
I would think that whatever, like, I would write the article. If I was going to, if, here's my suggestion. My guess is what you're gonna write as an article is more than what you would typically put on a Facebook page.
You wouldn't
And
put it
and
on,
I
it would
put-
link
I
it.
would put a link on
to
the
the
Facebook page.
No, I'm
too,
just
when
saying,
you're
but
ready.
using the Facebook page to, you can upload a flyer to a
Yeah.
Facebook page, you can, a brochure to the Facebook page.
Yes.
Link to, other.
Exactly, that's
Yeah,
what, but I just
that's
was,
what I meant, not by like,
Yeah.
let's put an article on
Yeah.
Facebook, obviously no one's gonna read it.
yeah, that was just my, thought.
And the other thing is, when you do this, it helps to have a response ability. So I always put for questions,
Yeah.
please email info@nshistory.org
Mhm.
for information. Because they invariably have questions that they will write you that they won't do elsewhere. So I got a lot of my feedback via email.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So that's something that I do separately. I don't know.
As a commission, do we have an information email?
No, I don't think we do.
No, the commission doesn't know.
And that's part of the thing, the problem, because they're gonna have questions, and the whole issue is to allay their fear. The fear wasn't there. The fear is there when you get a township letter because
Sure.
that you think your rights are being taken away. And that is what, trust me, when I met even with our own planning commission, it's like fears are gonna, the rights, they had some idea that all these rights were gonna leave them without their home.
Mhm.
And so the whole point of the meeting was to allay all that. Oh, no, we're not gonna tell you this. Oh, no, they can't just start a bed and breakfast next to you. And these are people who are making some decisions.
Right.
So that also had those fears. So that is a stumbling block to just, you can get it out there, but
Mhm.
but you got to be able to go back and forth with these people. And that's been the issue. You have to, here's a meeting. I held 4 meetings, 5 meetings at the tavern. Come, I'm going to be here, and I put the dates. And then people would come, and I met actually some of these people that I put up.
Mhm.
So, that's another option.
Mhm.
Come to a meeting and we will talk about the ordinance.
Well, Kathy, can you put
They could come to
together,
this meeting.
can you put together, maybe with some advice from Tiffany, a list of possible places that we can contact?
Put it in the minutes, so you'll have it.
And then, and also deadlines, and I think what we should maybe try and do. I think trying to get this out in November is rushing it a little
No,
bit,
we'll get it out more.
but maybe we can try and get it out in December. Yeah.
I can start with the ones that we can do.
Yeah. So we'll put that in your hands.
Okay.
What was the
I have
gentleman's
people that
name?
will do it.
That you
Doug
said-
Humes.
Doug Humes.
Mhm.
How do you spell that?
And this is
Uh,
not a vote, this is an
HUMES.
executive decision on the part of your chairman.
Very good. HUMES.
Okay. Discussion and possible action on marketing and brochure text. I think, Tiffany, considering that you threw this together in about 45 minutes, I think you did a great job. And basically, I don't have any problems with parts 2 and 3. Part 1, I think there needs to be a sentence in there that describes that says a little bit more about what our classifications actually are.
Mhm.
You know, the class 1, class 2, the ordinance, and
Well, the first line identifies and designates historic resources can be amended to say as class 1 or class.
or
2.
class 2 is appropriate, yeah.
Yeah,
And we don't actually maintain the historic resource list.
we don't have, well, who, wouldn't we have, if we actually had any properties on the list, we would have a list, but we don't have any properties to add to a proper list. That's
Well,
why I
the
left
thing
it in
is-
there. I was like, but we would have a list.
Well, I think this may be a question for Steve, because we don't have the final approval. The final approval is the Board of
But the maintaining
Supervisors.
of the list does rest with you.
The
According to-
maintaining of the list,
Yes,
Once we have a list.
I mean,
to
you're
maintain.
working,
physically adding it to the ordinance is up to us,
well, I mean,
because that's where the list resides.
well,
Mhm.
there is a list that would be separate from what the map is. The map is what you change. And so,
No, but the ordinance lists all the class 1 properties. And presumably will list all the class 2 properties as we pass them and that they get incorporated.
I'm gonna just put a note here.
See, that's my question.
let me look at that. My understanding was that there would be a list, kind of like there's the list of native trees that the tree commission does, and it
Okay.
basically says that this is the list that we have on the,
Mhm.
and that you would maintain that list to make sure it's correct. It may be part of the ordinance, but I think it sits outside of the ordinance as I understand it.
Okay.
The ordinance said that I believe there was 5 class 1s that started the list.
Right,
And so, but the list itself is maintained outside, and we would maintain it on the website. And it would just be, because the idea was that it would be updated. We wouldn't have to update the ordinance every time. The only thing we would be updating was the map.
yeah, well, that makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, other than that,
Well, so I did have benefits to homeowners. They're, like I said, I kind of plagiarized a lot of this, so it might not exactly apply to us. So there were some questions that I had that I wanted to just make sure we looked at. Some historical, it's in the italics, the second section, the third one, some historically designated buildings qualify for zoning benefits like additional by rights. Uses, fewer parking requirements and in-law apartments. I have no idea what the zoning requirements will do for that property, or if anything.
And currently I would say there's no additional benefit that I know of for a historic resource.
so basically we just have to take that one
I
out.
think that would have to come off.
Yeah, I just. said that.
I might also recommend, only because we use the word historic resource.
Mhm.
Where we see historic landmark, I would just change that to
Sure.
historic resource, just to be considered.
Yep, absolutely agree. I think sometimes
And we
writers
don't
choose
really
not to
have-
use the same word over and over and over
I
again, so
know.
they
We
interchange.
really don't have historic districts. Shouldn't we just say historic properties often have higher, more stable property values? We
You have
don't
to
have
pick
historic
district. No, I
districts.
don't.
1 second, let me change this real quick and then I'll do.
We call
And
it
where, what section and number are we looking at there?
second one in the middle.
Second one, the benefits.
Mm,
Historic properties often have higher.
Yeah,
more stable
got
property
it.
values.
And these are a little wordy if we were trying to put them into a brochure, so this reflects the idea of what we're trying to say, but if we want to.
Well, I don't think this is too wordy.
You don't think so?
Trifle, no.
Okay.
Because it would be
And you can
split
do
up between
bullets.
different
It's like
sections.
a bullet. Often
Okay.
have higher, more stable property values. That's a bullet. Neighboring buildings are less likely. You
Okay.
can bullet them so
Sure.
that.
Yeah, I mean, you can
each
play around with
phrase,
the
yeah.
layout.
Yeah, okay.
And I have a lot of photographs. The
Yeah. I
graph
know.
of place, I know.
Yeah,
I have
great.
beyond a lot of
So-
photographs.
Altering historic properties, I wanted to discuss that second part. Designated properties sometimes face demolition by neglect. That means that they're threatened by deterioration, decay, or disrepair. When this happens through the historic preservation ordinance, we can take action to get repairs made to the property. This said something different, like we can make you make changes to the property. I didn't feel as though that was the tone we
And they
wanted to take with the township, so I put it on the ordinance can take the action, but that might just be
I'm not
powering
comfortable.
behind.
I'm not comfortable with saying that, we can take action to get repairs made to the property, because
Mhm.
sometimes that's not the outcome.
Mhm.
Maybe we should just end the sentence at, we can take action. And stop it right there. Because depending on what's going, I mean, if a property's gone too far downhill, we're not gonna try and make the owner repair.
No. I mean,
We don't, different actions might take place with different kinds of properties. So I think we should just say we can take action and stop right there. And not specify what the
Yeah.
action would
and I
be.
think not knowing too exactly what the ordinance states, because I don't know it verbatim. That was
It
just sort of.
references demolition by neglect as
Yeah,
not.
it
I
does.
remember that, but it was
If-
the
if-
end. So what is the, what do we?
I think there were
have at our
several things that you
disposal
can
to
do.
Yeah, there
um,
were a bunch of different,
Options.
different options,
Yes,
yeah.
depending on the reason, and
right.
depending if it's a person had the funding or didn't have funds, and that's why.
And
Or is it a
depending on how
developer that's, some
deteriorated the building
developers or
is,
people who own a property let it
Mhm.
neglect.
Yeah.
And that's usually intentional. So that's a whole different one.
Right.
So that can be demolished. So you have to look at each one individually. So
I
you want to
mean,
make
we
it,
can put that
it's
in there,
good, but,
I think you
we'll make
just
it
need to
vague.
put a period after the word action.
Oh, yeah, no,
you may take action.
okay.
or may-
Like I said, that one was, wasn't entirely sure what we would want to say there. And then, there was another idea that I didn't get didn't have time to formulate in here, but it was adaptive reuse. Because I want to keep this as positive as possible and not
Mhm.
have
Totally.
negatives in there. But I didn't put the adaptive reuse thing in there because it said, and possibly a bed and breakfast. Like I said, I plagiarized a lot of this, and what the website said that I read said, and I know that was what people were like, no, I don't
No,
want a
the
bed and breakfast next to my house.
Well,
So homeowners want it. It was certain
But the
people
neighbors,
that-
but you know,
that certain people,
this is
yes.
this is a broad audience. We want everybody to see
well,
this,
yeah,
so.
also too, adaptive reuse really more affects the interior of the building than the exterior in most cases. We don't deal with building interiors.
Sure.
Yeah, but we will.
Adaptive reuse really gets its own.
Oh, no, we will if it's relevant.
I mean,
Like if the.
recommending approval of an adaptive reuse is kind of a standard thing that historic committees do.
It looks the same. It keeps the architecture from the outside.
Yeah.
But perhaps the inside becomes an office.
But is that
or-
something that we want to include in the brochure, is the notion of,
That is an important part of it, because there are going to be buildings that are going to maintain their identity and look the part, but are going to be reused
Well,
in a
like
different
the-
way
like the-
inside. They're not
like-
going to be this historic place that's
Like the
maintained inside.
cottages that we were asked to
Yes.
review up at Ellis Preserve.
Yeah, and
would we
it's,
want to put that under altering historic properties, benefits to homeowners, or protect townships historic resources?
I mean, as we go forward, there will be a time where homeowners come to us to discuss potential adaptive
Property
reuses before taking it to anybody else.
Benefits to homeowners?
it could be well, it's property owner, it could
Altering
be a
historic
business person
properties.
because they don't own it as a home. But they would be the ones who want to do adaptive reuse. Because they're developers or they own the property, but they're not a homeowner. of
I
it.
can just change that to benefits to
Properties.
property owners.
Yeah.
It's fine. But. So we would, advise
could
on
say-
potential adaptive reuse
You,
to,
you could take your last item here, works with property owners to protect landmarks. And recommends adaptive reuse when appropriate.
That's good.
Okay, next steps on this. We need some graphic design, I guess.
Yeah,
don't
I
think
have,
we're quite there yet, but we definitely will need that soon.
I can give it to,
well, is this the part where Chris, you with your experience with putting brochures together, takes the text and.
I just print brochures. I don't actually put anything together.
Fine.
I have someone who does.
Okay.
So, because you used the idea of the one I showed you, which has all the paintings on it as the cover. And that's ours for the maps of all the
Mhm.
historic places. So let me run it by Larry, because Larry Fisher always prints ours out. And you would give us the text. And then we'll see what photographs we have. And Doug Humes, the same gentleman, does that.
All right, so
So
next steps would then be
Next steps is
Tiffany would work with.
Tiffany works with Kathy.
Well, Tiffany, why don't we talk sometime in the next week?
Yeah.
And kind of get it,
Do another,
kind of talk about what our grand vision is. And then we can talk to, or you can talk to the designer. Right.
you can print it, is what you're saying, or would you want us? to-
That's what my usual thing is, printing end of it. But we can talk about like what kind of graphics we envision on it, how we might see the wording going,
Mhm.
so that when we, when Tiffany talks to the designer, it's not just, here's some stuff, figure it out. Which might work, but it might not.
all right, so subcommittee to adapt text to fit commission's vision of brochure. That sound fair?
Mhm.
That sounds good.
And then work with, I'm just gonna say historical, Newtown Square Historic Society, not naming names,
No,
but
don't name names.
yeah.
General.
And layout and graph,
Got all that?
got it,
Okay,
okay.
then I'll move on. The last item on our agenda is an update on the status of the James Price House and property. And Stephen, I guess we're looking to you for this.
Other than what I shared earlier, I don't have any update. I mean,
We pulled the application, but based on the fact that they threatened to demolish, we wanted to know, has that been terminated? Do they still own it? Has she come forward with a new plan? I mean, those kinds of things, because this is a very historic place that would be resubmitted. And I think she knows that. That's why I'm saying, we needed to know more on that.
Yeah, because we were asked to hold off.
Yeah.
Acting on it.
yeah, I mean, again. I know she's still in discussions with staff about options.
And it's not for sale at this time.
I can't speak to that. I don't know whether she has it for sale or not. I don't believe it's for sale. I haven't seen anything, but I don't want to go on record, say it's not for sale and find out tomorrow that she sold it. I don't know. As far as I know, it's not on any, like when I pull up a local sales site,
No,
I
I
don't see
get that.
anything. I mean, but to say that she has it for sale or doesn't have it for sale, properties sell all the time that I don't know about. So it would be very hard for me. To
Well,
make
we
that-
were considering on what to resubmit it, the
I
application.
understand what your.
Because, yeah, so,
Okay, so no update.
I just am not in a position that I can say as to where it is, because there's things I just don't know.
sure.
So as far as you know, the status is quo.
That's what I know at the moment.
Okay. That finishes our regular agenda items.
Okay.
Is there any public comment?
Yeah, I did too. I didn't see it.
I don't think, I mean, like, I haven't seen it on any of the listings, but that doesn't mean it's.
Okay, I will trust there is then no public comment.
Be on the board.
Items for the next agenda.
Items for next agenda.
Hopefully, we will have multiple hearings on multiple properties. Do you think we'll be able to get all four?
I think you can get 3. I'd be surprised if you got all 4, because I don't know that. That I've only got 3 in my folder here that have been processed. In order for that to be the case, you would have to have, I think the other one have to be processed first thing tomorrow. In order to have 30 days.
Oh, well, they can do that, I'm sure. I mean, Kathy turned it in, what,
They have
24
nothing.
hours ago, 48 hours
They have
ago?
nothing better to do with
Yesterday
their.
We have great
Wednesday.
faith.
I,
Township.
you know, 3 may,
Do 4 more.
I don't know how long it will take you to do 3. You've done 2 in a night. I don't think you've done 3 in a night, so.
Well, in the case where we did 2 in a night, we had one that was contested.
Yeah.
They took
If
longer.
we don't have any that are contested, we can whip right through them.
I suspect one of the 3 will
Might
be
be.
contested,
Okay,
but at least from what I know.
Oh, I'm sure.
fair enough. We shall come prepared to do battle.
Yeah.
Okay, well then maybe for the item for the agenda, it will just be hearings with a number not specified
Mhm.
on,
We'll know for sure. I can verify that for you.
Yeah, I don't need.
Once
specifics.
we get the letter out and know whether somebody responds back and asks for a
You know,
continuance or something like
when
that.
we do the actual agenda for the next meeting.
We'll have
can
that
Be
for sure.
specific.
Yeah.
But we don't need to be in the minutes,
No, I know you have 3 applications that are potentially on your next agenda.
right? So we've got that. We have,
Ordinance discussion.
the ordinance discussion.
Mhm.
We've got the, next brochure,
For sure.
the next phase of the brochure. And the next phase of the outreach to the community. Did I miss anything?
And I put slash.
Did I miss anything, Chris?
Not that I know of.
Okay,
Yeah, okay. Jeez. I'm already-
Just real quickly, just so I know what you would like staff to be doing. For the ordinance in particular. Do you want the current ordinance attached to your agenda so that it's available that way? I mean, people can go get it off a line, but I just want to know what you would like for purposes of your discussion.
Well, I don't think we needed it at all attached to the,
Okay,
I mean,
I
easier
don't-
is good. Pardon? Easier is good. It's easy, but you know, we should be fine.
yeah. Well, the thing is, we don't see the draft of the minutes until a few days before the meeting, so it doesn't do us any good.
Should copy it off.
We
You
just
should just
copy-
go and
I
copy
mean,
it
we,
off
we
this
could
week.
just copy.
no,
it
I
off.
didn't know.
No, no,
if you-
for the-
I just,
for the next
my
meeting.
question was more like in the meeting. If you're going through a section, do you want that pulled up so that you can be, it can be
Yes.
on the screen so everybody's in the
Yes.
same place? That's
Yes.
the reason
Oh,
why
yes.
I asked the
Yes,
question.
yes,
I'll be more
yes.
specific.
Okay. And, Steve, if you could let me know what needs to be in the report that goes to the supervisors on the properties we've already
Is there a
recommended,
form or something?
that would be helpful.
It's not a form, but it just says,
No, that's why I
A
want you just to,
format. That was my question.
Yeah,
too, about-
format, too.
Yeah, is there expected information
Well, the
or a particular
ordinance-
layout of that information?
the ordinance gives, the ordinance just says that you give a report based on what your findings are. And so, but that includes what that was commented on by those who were there either for or against the project.
So can we take,
Or,
You gotta take your minutes.
yeah, I was just gonna say, so we take the notes from the minutes to say,
yeah,
description of the property, comment from.
I mean,
the
I know
owner,
you
comment
put
from
a full report together that you brought and everybody, you shared about the properties, each one.
And
I
I
don't-
forwarded that to you my Google Docs on each, I think 3 of them. I don't have the 4th, which was the very first one, the Lewis one.
Yeah,
I can, I have a write-up though for that, and then you would have to remember, go through the minutes to see what we commented on each one.
Mhm.
So that if Alice Graham was contested, but you made some very good comments back about.
Which I do not remember.
If they're in the
months
minutes.
later.
Right, so the idea is, here's the property, here's the summary, here's
I
what
believe that.
points in the ordinance it meets for us to recommend, and then, if it's contested, just sort of a summary of how
Yeah,
that,
what it,
what the discussion.
I think you would want to mention what why it was contested,
Mhm. Right.
you know, I mean, I think, like, I'm remembering back to the school up here, the Friends School, their biggest concern was what they
grants
needed to do,
Mhm. To get their grant.
well, was grants, but also was, you know, like what they were trying to do for safety on the front of the
Mhm,
building.
and the
You know,
doors and
that was
things.
their concern, that it
Yeah.
would, that to make it historic for them would be cost prohibitive. That was their concern. So it would be helpful for the board to know that up front in when they make the decision in the direction that they're headed.
And has that property hasn't been seen by them yet?
None
No.
of, the board has
No,
not seen any of them
it's-
because they just
So we need
approved
to
the
go
other
back.
last night.
Okay, so we need to go back to those first ones and,
Well,
But
basically, this
actually-
is something I have to do as,
Yes,
as the chairman.
but the actual objection wasn't quite the history as much as the time element, which
Right.
we had to allay again their fears that it's not going to be that different from you going to get a permit to do any new.
Right,
It's just one more step. It comes here, but
Right.
it's still not, that was her thing. It
Mhm.
was going to take too long. She thought it was going to have to go through all these hoops.
Well, I think there was 2 things. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that, I think there was the issue of how long, but I think there was also, if I recall, her statement was related
Altering
to
the front.
they're concerned about safety and what they want to do.
well, they were concerned that they couldn't make the alterations to the front of the building that they needed to make it ADA compliant and things of that sort.
And safety.
And the time frame, the reason she was concerned about that was because she was afraid it would affect their ability to apply for grants.
Right.
And to implement grants that they'd already received.
Right.
Mhm.
And I didn't get a chance to say it to her at the time, but the fact of the matter is there are ways of dealing with that. You usually can get extensions.
Yeah, but she's working based on preconceived fears.
Well, she was working based on not having a lot of experience with grants.
I could see her challenge,
So
but
you'll
all
know-
of that
you'll
is
know,
to be in
you'll
the
have
minutes.
Yeah.
I know I wrote comprehensive notes in the minutes, but if you have any questions, let me know, because I probably have more written down. It didn't make it
Yeah.
to the written version.
Yeah.
Because the first
Now-
one objected as well, so we have to write that.
Now,
one.
when do you
Lewis,
need this
the
by,
horses.
Steve?
So the board always likes for things like this at least 2 weeks prior. So I send that to them
When is the next supervisors meeting?
2 weeks from yesterday.
Is it-
Um,
No,
but they need-
seriously, when I went on the township website, the next meeting was listed for December. Maybe that's been fixed, but I mean, it was really weird. Our meeting wasn't listed. The next supervisors meeting was listed as being in December.
well, there,
And
so
Tuesday was November 1st.
the next supervisors meeting is the 13th of November. The one after that is the 27th of November. And then they'll, depending on how things go with the budget, there's only one scheduled in December, and that's the 11th.
Yeah, that's the one that was listed on the website, but nothing was listed for November.
Okay, we will take a look at that.
So, but do you think realistically they're gonna act on any of these 2 weeks from now?
You turn it in when?
Here's what I will tell you in regards to 2 weeks from now. I will be, hopefully everything, I'll have my life together and have everything to be able to present the budget. And so they're gonna be their big thing that
Yeah.
night. And That will probably take a good portion of the meeting. That being said, if you had one or two for them to review, I think they could at least, their point at this point is to say up or down. Yes, we're ready to hear this and go through the process to add it, or no, we're not. And that's what happens at that next stage. If you'll remember the status or the process point, that's saying that I would think that if I could get it to them, relatively quickly, they'd have a chance to review it. Maybe they would. They might put it off just because of it being a big budget night.
And one of the reasons I'm asking is because the Horace Lewis house is going to be a bone of contention. And I'm sure the developers are going to be there.
Yeah, I
think
like,
they
if I
should
was
be there
gonna
too.
pick one to start
Pick the
with,
two
to
that
put
are
on there, I probably would not pick that as my top
No.
choice.
Pick the two that didn't contest, which is Friends Meeting and the Mill Workers House.
Right.
And that would be that's how I would start. They didn't contest.
No.
It would
they're easy.
be an easy process through. They could see how it works.
Mhm. Easy for me
Picking
to
one
write
that's contested is always more difficult.
Right. Well, I was just thinking about the order in which we addressed these, and we started with the ones that were most contested.
Yeah, the other ones just kind of went by, flew by. so-
Right.
And I think I sent you the write-ups on both of those and pretty much it was uncontested. So that would be an easy one for you to write.
Yeah,
Because I sent you three. The only one I didn't have was Lewis, and I can write the
Right.
description of it.
yeah. And if I can't find what I need, I'll always get back to you.
Yeah,
Send it to
just
me again.
ask.
Okay, if there's nothing further, I'm going to declare the meeting adjourned.
Oh, did you want a motion?
Motion for that?
Yes, I do need a motion for that. Thank you.
I would like to motion that we declare the meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Chris. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. The meeting is adjourned.
Kathy, what was the